It's an emotional day here inside of Golden One Center, as many fans still in shock that Sacramento is trading away fan favorite Tyrese Haliburton to the Indiana Pacers.
A few years ago, shortly after getting traded from the Sacramento Kings and arriving to Indiana, nobody expected Tyrese Haliburton to break out and be well on his way to becoming the NBA's best point guard. He had all the skills and all the talent, combined with an electrifying playstyle that we all want to see from the ideal point guard.
Crosses over on Beverly. Float game for the win! And one! Tyrese! The terror!
Haliburton had the shooting, the handles, the size to finish through contact, along with being one of the best and most effective passers in all of basketball. He didn't just lead the league in assists. He was also top 5 in the league in assist-to-turnover ratio, which is even more impressive than his raw numbers. You combine his skills with the playstyle of the Pacers among the fastest teams in the league, and it was a match made in heaven. However, when the 2024-25 season commenced, something changed. The Haliburton we once knew looked nothing like his previous self. He became slower, lethargic. His awkward shooting form, which used to be very effective, was now just awkward. He lost his shot, he lost his speed, and he's lost that fire he once had inside of him. The Indiana Pacers, who reached the conference finals for the first time in a decade, now have the expectations of being a perennial playoff contender. Yet their franchise player is the guy who's dragging them down. In this video, we're going to take a look at 4 NBA stars who look like they aged 10 years over the span of a single summer, and what caused their severe regression that seemingly happened overnight in the blink of an eye. Let's take a detailed look. Haliburton had the worst start out of any reigning All-NBA player. A guy once known for flirting with a 50-40-90 season and a deadly efficient player has turned way more passive, less willing to attack off a drive, and is now taking 60% of his shots from beyond the arc. Take a look at his shot chart compared to previous years. Haliburton is taking a ridiculously low 9% of his shots at the basket. For a guy of his height and length, there's no reason he should be shying away from attacking. He looks different, but almost unnaturally different. Like there's something wrong with him. At first, fans were wondering if Haliburton had some lingering hamstring problems. Remember during the Olympics over the summer, Team USA did an MRI on Haliburton's leg and decided it was best to lower his minutes and ease him into the rotation. Everyone just assumed it was the same hamstring injury he suffered back in the 2024 playoffs.
Is that growing? It's got to be those.
While hamstring issues aren't that serious compared to, a knee problem or Achilles problem, it can linger for months, sometimes years, and you might not ever feel the same. But is that the real blame for Haliburton's incredible regression from an All-NBA player to barely an All-Star caliber point guard anymore? Well, in a report by Kevin O'Connor, he stated, quote, "I've heard with Haliburton, I've had some sources around the league tell me they believe it's not his hamstring that's the cause of his struggles this year. It's his back. He had back spasms in the postseason. He's still wearing a heating pad on the bench. Back issues are tough to deal with." It makes sense. There are times when he has the mismatch off a switch and he still hesitates to go at him. Even when it's a big man, it should be an easy mismatch for Haliburton to take advantage of. That's what he used to do, but he's way more cautious than he used to be. Whether it's a hamstring or back problem, it's caused a clear lack of explosion in his game. Over time, it's a domino effect. When Haliburton realized he no longer has the speed or explosiveness to get by his defender, he slowly stopped attacking the basket in general, as his confidence is no longer as high as it used to be.
How are you feeling mentally not being able to know or just get through it?
It's part of it. It's part of basketball.
Your final numbers were pretty good based on the way you played the second half. You still didn't necessarily think this was a step in the right direction. Were you tonight or?
No.
Haliburton admittedly lost faith in his own game, questioning his own abilities and wondering if he'll ever return back to his usual self. To make matters worse, his regression directly led to the demise of the entire Pacers offense. They used to be the second best offensive team in the league, and now they're among the bottom half of the entire league. He has a similar impact on his team like Steve Nash had with the Suns. The offensive engine runs through Tyrese Haliburton, and when he's not on his game, this is not a playoff team. The Pacers are a glass cannon, a hyper-offensive team who didn't care much about defense. That was their identity with Haliburton at his best. But at his worst, they're just bad in both categories, a horrible offensive and defensive team. If there's a chance of redemption or any chance of Haliburton maintaining a consistent high level of play like he used to, the Pacers would still be a formidable team. But now, I guess his voice isn't the only thing that lacks consistency. I'm sorry, I had to make that joke.
Yeah, I don't care. I did not care. But some guys on our team took exception to it. They were a little frustrated about it.
Jamal Murray. Remember back during the pandemic when Jamal Murray and Donovan Mitchell were going absolute bonkers in the bubble, trading 40, 50-point games back and forth until the Nuggets pulled through in Game 7? It wasn't just in the bubble either, but playoff Murray was a real thing for a few years. He would elevate his game to a level of a superstar, and he had the ego and arrogance to back it up.
Beautiful basketball by Murray, putting the Nuggets on his back.
However, after spending most of the 2024 playoffs playing through a calf strain and then being completely useless for Team Canada, which was probably even more disappointing because he failed an entire country. Enter the 2024-25 season, and with a hefty contract worth over $50 million per year under his belt, the expectations for Jamal were higher than they've ever been before. Out of all players set to make over $50 million per year, and I've mentioned this in another video before, but if you haven't seen it, he's the only one who hasn't made any All-Star, All-NBA, or All-Defensive team. He's the only guy making $50+ million with none of those accolades. He might be the most overpaid second option in the history of basketball. This was the year he needed to at least show he's capable of producing at a high level in the regular season. Unfortunately, Murray has not answered the call. It's his worst season in a long time. Even by his regular season standards, this is not the same Murray we're used to. Perhaps some folks still point to his lingering calf problems from a few months prior. But if that was the case, the Nuggets shouldn't have given him that massive contract to begin with. But it's not just that. His overall decision-making is completely lackluster, and he seems much more out of shape than he usually is. This is the best era in the history of the Denver Nuggets, with the best player in the world at his absolute peak. Yet, the biggest question of this team still remains the same. Can the Nuggets survive the non-Jokic minutes? When Jokic is off the court, it's worse than it's ever been. Take a look at how horrendous their net rating is when he's not playing. Now, it was bad before, but this is way worse. Considering that Jamal Murray is the primary playmaker who leads the Nuggets when Jokic is sitting, it's no surprise their offense is the way it is.
Guarded by Doncic. Murray over Doncic. Off the heel of Murray. Murray's open. Didn't realize it. Realizes it. Misses the shot.
Perhaps Murray being out of shape is also a driving factor. He gets fatigued way quicker than even an old Russell Westbrook, and he looks like he's laboring up and down the court just trying to catch his breath. Perhaps there's a lingering calf or hamstring problem or whatever that's been plaguing him for months. Regardless, there's no question this contract has been the ultimate bottleneck for the Nuggets' plan to establish a dynasty. If that plan is even able to come to fruition, Murray needs to get substantially better, or else he'll continue to be the biggest burden on this franchise. Paul George. Among all players in this video, Paul George is the only one who's getting up there in age. In his mid-30s, it's around that time players typically decline. However, with George, he's actually maintained a high level of play well into his 30s for his entire time on the Clippers. In his final season there, he put up respectable numbers, shot the three ball at a 41.3% clip on nearly 8 attempts per game. That 41.3% was a career high, believe it or not. More importantly, George also managed to play 74 games. In 5 seasons in LA, these were the number of games he appeared in every other season. To play 74 games sparked a lot of optimism for George. It seemed like all those lingering injuries that kept him off the court were finally over, and he reached full health. Everyone thought the same about Kawhi, who played more games than he's had in years. Were they finally both healthy again? Well, the answer became obvious. No, they're not. It was their final year of their contract, and they were playing for their next payday. Even if George did have some injuries, he probably played through them just to show other teams he's healthy and he wants to chase another massive contract. While Kawhi tricked the Clippers into re-signing him, there was bound to be some team out there, some desperate team willing to throw max money at one of the best two-way players of his generation, no matter how crippled he might be. And what desperate team was that? The Sixers, of course. George got the max he was seeking, but it's going to be the last contract he'll ever get. Shortly after signing the deal, this happened. At a glance, it may seem like a freak injury. Paul George even said, quote, "It was just, again, a freak incident where someone's bang stuck his knee out, which caused my knee not able to, a freak accident." George is no stranger to freak accidents. He's had probably the most notorious freak injury that was the most gruesome we've seen in a long time. However, he said this about every injury he's gotten. Even back on the Clippers, he's had his share of knee problems, hyperextensions. It seemed so commonplace, you can't help but imagine maybe his knees are just much weaker than the average NBA player's knee. They buckle with even the most minimal amount of force. It's safe to say he's just injury-prone at this stage of his career, and over the years, the damage to his body is insurmountable. He has barely any lift on his jump shot, he's slower and lethargic, even struggling to get past even the most average defenders. And with his role on the team diminishing as they move into a different direction, George is basically a role player at this point. A very expensive role player on a $200 million contract. Desmond Bane. In terms of volume and efficiency, Desmond Bane was once considered among the greatest shooters in basketball. In his sophomore season, he shot 44% from 3 on nearly 7 attempts per game. By his 4th season, he was putting up all-star caliber numbers and seemed like the perfect young player to grow alongside a Grizzlies franchise looking to get back into the realm of competing in the playoffs. In his 5th season, however, he suffered an oblique injury early on, and since recovering from it, he hasn't been the same since. In fact, Bane's having a tumultuous season. Everything about his game dropped off a cliff, and it's visible in his numbers. The Grizzlies have also been criticized for their poor management of Bane's injury, and even got accused of playing him while he's still injured. It's like they rushed him back, and now he's a shell of his former self. The team has been playing better without him, and they've experienced success in spite of his struggles. I'm kinda curious how the NBA's new regulation plays a role with Bane's return from injury. Not just him, but every other player on this list. Remember back in October of 2023? When Adam Silver was negotiating a new TV deal, the biggest issue that came up was player participation. The general purpose of the new rule would be to, quote, ultimately give the league office authority for greater oversight over discipline for missed games and an ability to fine teams over $1 million for each instance of violating resting rules. I wonder if teams around the league now feel pressure to make their players play even when they're not at full health. Because the NBA is now watching them closely, especially teams like the Grizzlies and Sixers, who've been injured quite often and rested their best players for so many games in previous years. But I mean, they had legit injuries, legit reasons to miss games. Regardless, if we judge Bane on the fact that he is healthy, well, his role has reduced drastically too. He's having a hard time adjusting. For a player once known as a cornerstone of the Grizzlies franchise, one of the best shooters the league has ever seen, he certainly doesn't look like it anymore. And despite his struggles, his past excellence has made him a valuable trade piece. While injuries have hampered the franchise during this era, they've recovered and ramped up back into an elite team. But Bane might not be the guy they want as their starting shooting guard now. because he's really struggling to get back to his usual form, the Desmond Bane we all knew. Anyway, that's all folks. Those were 4 NBA stars, or borderline stars, who looked like they aged like 10 years overnight. Do you think injuries are the main reason and that they could recover and get back to normal? Or do you think there's something else at play? And is their regression a sign of worse things to come? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Of course, thank you all so much for watching. I hope y'all enjoyed the video. And of course, as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.